The enigmatic queen, Chitra. Please subscribe, this is my new channel. In a distant misty kingdom, surrounded by towering mountains and dense forests, there existed a palace that shimmered like a jewel under the sun. It was the residence of Queen Chitra, a woman of extraordinary beauty and mystique. Her luminous skin glowed like moonlight, her dark eyes held the secrets of ages, and her voice was like a melody that bewitched all who heard it. But her beauty was not the only thing that made her legendary. For over 100 years, Queen Chitra had remained youthful, untouched by time. Despite numerous suitors over the decades, every man who married her disappeared the very next morning, leaving behind no trace. The kingdom was filled with whispers. Some said she was blessed by the gods, while others believed she was cursed. Many wondered how she had managed to stay young for a century, but no one dared to ask. Those who had tried to pry into her secrets had mysteriously vanished, leaving the townsfolk terrified of the queen. Even so, tales of her unmatched beauty continued to spread far and wide, attracting kings, warriors, and princes from distant lands. They all sought her hand in marriage, convinced they could break the cycle of disappearances. But none ever returned. One such man was King Devraj, a powerful and ambitious ruler. Drawn by the tales of Chitra's beauty, he arrived at her palace, determined to win her heart. The queen accepted his proposal with her usual enigmatic smile, and a grand wedding was held under the stars. That night, as the kingdom celebrated, Devraj sat in his chamber, marveling at his fortune. But when dawn broke, the palace servants found his chambers empty. His crown lay abandoned on the bed, and no sign of the king could be found. This pattern had repeated countless times, and yet no one could uncover the reason behind the disappearances. Some believed the queen was a sorceress who sacrificed her husbands to retain her youth. Others whispered of a hidden beast in the palace that devoured them. The truth, however, remained shrouded in darkness. The mysterious vanishings of Queen Chitra's husbands turned her palace into a place of fear and intrigue. The common people whispered about her in hushed tones, spinning countless rumors and theories. Some claimed she had made a pact with a dark deity, trading the lives of her husbands to maintain her eternal youth. Others believed the palace itself was cursed, a living entity that consumed the unfortunate men who dared to marry the queen. Priests from the temples sought answers through divine prayers and rituals. They burned sacred herbs and chanted mantras, but their efforts yielded no results. Meanwhile, scholars and alchemists speculated that the queen had discovered a secret elixir of immortality, one that required a sacrifice to sustain its magic. Despite the fear and mystery surrounding her, Queen Chitra remained a figure of fascination. Tales of her beauty and the eerie silence of her palace spread far and wide, drawing attention from both the curious and the foolishly brave. Among those intrigued was Yuvraj Vikram, the prince of a neighboring kingdom. Unlike others, Vikram was not blinded by Chitra's beauty. He was determined to uncover the truth behind the disappearances, not for fame or fortune, but for justice. Vikram had heard of the pain and confusion suffered by the families of the missing grooms, and he vowed to end the queen's dark reign of terror. Before approaching the queen, Vikram spent weeks gathering information. He spoke to villagers who lived near the palace, combed through old manuscripts, and consulted wise hermits in the mountains. What he found was a cryptic warning etched into an ancient scroll. "Beware the heart that beats not with love, for it hungers endlessly. To face the cursed queen is to face the shadows of the soul." Undeterred, Vikram devised a plan. He would not only meet Queen Chitra, but also win her trust. Unlike the others, he would not succumb to her charm so easily. Instead, he would seek the source of her secret, whatever it might be, and expose it to the world. But the prince had no idea what awaited him inside the glittering walls of her palace. He was stepping into a web of lies, danger, and a darkness more ancient than the kingdom itself. Prince Vikram arrived at Queen Chitra's palace with great fanfare. His arrival was unlike the others who had come before him. No displays of arrogance, no excessive gifts, and no proclamations of love. Instead, he presented himself as a humble suitor, speaking of his admiration for the queen's wisdom and grace rather than her beauty. Queen Chitra, seated on her grand throne, observed him with keen eyes. There was something different about Vikram. He was calm, unshaken by her presence, and his words carried a sincerity she had not encountered in centuries. She offered him a slight smile, her voice as smooth as silk. "Many have come before you, Prince Vikram," she said. "They sought to claim my hand, but none stayed to enjoy the privilege. Do you not fear the fate that has befallen the others?" Vikram bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I do not fear what I do not understand. I have come not only to win your hand, but also to learn the truth behind the veil of mystery surrounding you." Chitra's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. "Truth is often a dangerous thing, Prince. Are you certain you wish to pursue it?" "I am," Vikram replied firmly. Impressed by his courage, the queen agreed to his proposal. The palace prepared for a grand wedding, and Vikram was given a lavish chamber to stay in until the ceremony. But unlike the previous grooms, Vikram did not spend the night celebrating or admiring the palace's opulence. Instead, he quietly explored its halls, paying close attention to its unusual design. The palace was unlike any other he had seen. The corridors twisted unnaturally, and some doors led to nowhere. Ancient carvings adorned the walls, depicting scenes of a queen surrounded by shadowy figures. A strange energy seemed to pulse through the air, as if the palace itself was alive. That night, Vikram was restless. As the moonlight poured into his chamber, he heard a faint sound, a whisper carried by the wind. Following it, he found himself drawn to a hidden staircase concealed behind a tapestry. The stairs spiraled downward into darkness. With a torch in hand, Vikram descended the steps. The air grew colder, and the whispers grew louder. At the bottom, he discovered a massive locked door. The carvings on it were ancient and menacing, depicting clawed hands reaching out from the shadows. At the center of the door was a strange symbol, a heart pierced by a dagger. Vikram's instincts told him this was the source of the queen's secret. Before he could investigate further, the whispers suddenly stopped, and he felt a presence behind him. Turning quickly, he found Queen Chitra standing at the top of the staircase, her expression unreadable. "You are a curious one, Prince Vikram," she said softly, her voice carrying both warmth and warning. "But curiosity often leads to danger. Go back to your chamber. You'll need your strength for the wedding tomorrow." Vikram nodded, pretending to retreat. But as he climbed back up the stairs, his determination grew stronger. Whatever lay behind that door, he would uncover it. He was certain it held the answers to the disappearances and the queen's unnatural youth. Little did he know, the true test of his courage and wit was yet to come. The wedding took place the next day with grandeur befitting a queen and a prince. The entire kingdom rejoiced, and Queen Chitra's palace was filled with music and celebration. Yet amidst the festivities, Prince Vikram's mind remained preoccupied. The strange door and the hidden staircase haunted him, and he resolved to return to it once the night fell. As the wedding feast ended and the guests departed, Vikram was escorted to the royal chamber prepared for him and Queen Chitra. The queen, ever composed and enchanting, smiled at him. "Rest well tonight, my prince," she said softly. "Tomorrow begins a new chapter for both of us." Vikram nodded, hiding his suspicion behind a polite smile. Once the queen retired to her private quarters, Vikram waited until the palace grew silent. Grabbing a torch, he slipped out of the chamber and retraced his steps to the hidden staircase. When he reached the massive door at the bottom, he examined it closely. The carvings seemed to pulsate faintly under the torchlight, as though alive. In the center, the symbol of the heart and dagger glowed ominously. Determined, Vikram searched for a way to unlock the door. Nearby, he discovered an inscription etched into the stone wall. It was written in an ancient language he barely understood, but his studies as a prince had taught him enough to decipher it. "Only the unbroken heart may pierce the veil. Blood of the brave, sacrifice of the willing." Vikram realized what the door required. Without hesitation, he drew his dagger and made a small cut on his palm. He pressed his bleeding hand against the glowing heart symbol, and the door shuddered. Slowly it creaked open, revealing a dark and cavernous space beyond. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with an unnatural energy. The room was vast, its walls covered in strange runes that seemed to writhe and shift. At the center stood a pedestal, and upon it lay an ornate mirror framed in gold and black stone. The mirror's surface shimmered like liquid, and Vikram felt an inexplicable pull toward it. As he approached, the whispers returned. louder this time, forming coherent words. Turn back, mortal. The truth is not for the faint of heart. But Vikram stood firm. I will not turn back. Show me the truth. The mirror's surface rippled, and a vision began to form. Vikram saw younger Queen Chitra standing in the same chamber. Beside her was an old sorcerer, his face twisted with malice and greed. The sorcerer spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber. You wish for eternal youth and beauty, my queen? It comes at a price. Your soul shall be bound to this mirror, and you must feed it the lifeblood of those who love you. Only then will the curse sustain you. Chitra hesitated in the vision, her face filled with anguish. But she eventually nodded. Do it. I cannot bear the thought of losing my beauty, of growing old and forgotten. The sorcerer performed a dark ritual, binding Chitra's soul to the mirror. From that moment on, every man who loved her and married her was consumed by the mirror, their life force feeding her eternal youth. As the vision faded, Vikram turned to see Queen Chitra standing behind him. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with sorrow. You see now, don't you? She said, her voice trembling. This is my curse. I made a terrible choice long ago, and now I am a prisoner of this mirror. Every husband I've taken, their lives were stolen to sustain me. I never wanted this, but I cannot break free. Vikram stepped back, his hand instinctively reaching for his sword. Why didn't you stop? Why continue this cycle of death? Chitra's expression hardened. Because I fear the alternative. If the mirror is destroyed, it will claim me as well. I will cease to exist. The room grew colder as the mirror began to glow brighter, its surface swirling violently. A voice emanated from it, dark and commanding. The prince is brave, but he too shall feed me. He is bound by the queen's choice. Vikram clenched his fist, his resolve unwavering. Number, this ends tonight. Chitra's eyes widened. What are you doing? Vikram drew his sword and raised it toward the mirror. Breaking the curse. Part 6. The True Curse of Queen Chitra. Vikram's sword gleamed in the dim light as he swung it toward the cursed mirror. But before the blade could strike, the mirror emitted a blinding flash of light, throwing him backward. The dark voice from the mirror laughed, echoing through the chamber. Foolish mortal, do you think you can destroy me so easily? I am bound to her soul and to the power she desired. Strike me, and you condemn her to an eternity of torment. Queen Chitra stepped forward, her expression torn between desperation and fear. Vikram, stop! If you destroy the mirror, you will doom me. My very existence is tied to it. Vikram rose to his feet, gripping his sword tightly. And if I don't, the deaths of countless innocents will continue. How many more lives must be sacrificed to keep you alive, Chitra? This curse must end. Chitra's face softened, and for the first time tears filled her eyes. Do you think I don't know that? I have lived with this burden for 100 years, watching as men who loved me disappeared, powerless to stop it. I made a selfish choice, and I have paid for it every day since. The voice of the mirror interrupted, its tone dripping with malice. Do not listen to her lies. She accepted this willingly, out of vanity and greed. She is mine, as are you. Your life, too, will sustain her beauty. The mirror began to glow again, its surface warping as shadowy hands reached out toward Vikram. He stepped back, narrowly avoiding their grasp. The room shook violently, and the whispers intensified, forming a cacophony of voices. Vikram looked at Chitra. There must be another way to break this curse. Tell me, Chitra, is there any way to free you and stop this madness? Chitra hesitated, her gaze shifting to the mirror. The sorcerer who created this curse told me there was one way to undo it. The mirror must be destroyed, but the one who strikes the final blow must be willing to sacrifice their own soul. The curse demands a life in exchange for freedom. Vikram's heart sank at her words. A life? Then No! Chitra interrupted, stepping closer. I can't let you do that. This is my curse, my punishment. If anyone must make the sacrifice, it should be me. Vikram's eyes met hers, and for a moment, he saw the woman behind the curse. the sorrowful, broken soul who had carried this burden for so long. He realized she was not a monster, but a prisoner, trapped by her own mistake. The mirror's voice grew louder, its tone panicked. Do not listen to her. She is weak, unworthy of your sacrifice. Strike me down, prince, and take her place. With your strength, I can offer you immortality, power, and glory. Vikram ignored the mirror's temptations. Instead, he turned to Chitra, his expression resolute. You've suffered enough, Chitra. Let me end this. Let me give you a chance to live a life free from this curse. Tears streamed down Chitra's face. No, Vikram, you don't have to do this. You barely know me. I know enough, Vikram said softly, and I cannot let this curse claim another innocent life. Before Chitra could stop him, Vikram charged toward the mirror, his sword raised high. The shadowy hands clawed at him, trying to hold him back, but he pushed through with sheer determination. With a final mighty swing, he struck the mirror. The glass shattered, releasing a deafening scream as dark energy exploded outward. Vikram was thrown to the ground, the force of the blast extinguishing his torch. The room was plunged into darkness, and for a moment all was silent. When the dust settled, Chitra crawled to Vikram's side. The mirror was gone, reduced to shards of glass that glimmered faintly in the dim light. Vikram lay motionless, his face pale but peaceful. No, Chitra whispered, her voice breaking. Vikram, wake up! Please don't leave me! But it was too late. The curse had claimed its final sacrifice.
As Queen Chitra knelt beside Vikram's lifeless body, the air around her grew unnervingly quiet. The whispers had ceased, and the oppressive energy that had haunted the palace for a century had dissipated. Yet, her heart felt heavier than ever. Tears streamed down her face as she cradled Vikram's head in her arms. Why did you do this? She whispered. You could have lived. You could have been free. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared where the shattered pieces of the mirror lay. The shards began to levitate, swirling in the air like fireflies. Chitra stepped back in alarm as the fragments gathered together, forming a ghostly figure, the sorcerer who had cursed her. Did you think breaking the mirror would end it all? The sorcerer sneered, his voice cold and sharp. The curse may be broken, but I still hold dominion over your soul, Chitra. You are not free yet. Chitra stood, her sorrow replaced by anger. You've tormented me long enough. You've stolen countless lives, including his. I won't let you win. The sorcerer's laughter echoed through the chamber. And what will you do, cursed queen? Without the mirror, your beauty will fade, your youth will wither, and your life will be no more. You belong to me. Chitra looked down at Vikram's still form, her fists clenching. She had been a prisoner of her vanity and fear for far too long. Now, she realized what true courage meant. It was not about clinging to life but about protecting others, even at great cost. She stepped forward, facing the sorcerer. You're right. My time is over. But you will not take another soul. I will finish this, once and for all. The sorcerer's smile faltered. What are you doing? Chitra closed her eyes and began to chant the ancient words the sorcerer had once taught her, the words of binding and release. The runes on the chamber walls began to glow, and a powerful wind swept through the room. The sorcerer screamed as the light grew brighter, burning through his spectral form. No. You cannot do this. You will destroy us both. Chitra opened her eyes, now filled with a determined light. That's the idea. The light engulfed the room, and the sorcerer's form disintegrated, his screams fading into silence. Chitra felt her strength leaving her, her beauty dissolving like mist in the morning sun. Her once youthful face aged rapidly, and her body grew frail. She knelt beside Vikram once more, her hands trembling. You showed me what it means to be free, Vikram. Thank you. As her life faded, a warm light surrounded Vikram's body. His eyes fluttered open, and he gasped for breath. Confused, he sat up and saw Chitra, now an old woman, smiling faintly at him. Chitra, he whispered, his voice filled with concern. She reached out and touched his face. "The curse is broken, Vikram. You are free. Live your life, for both of us." Before he could respond, Chitra's body dissolved into light, her spirit finally free. The oppressive darkness that had once haunted the palace vanished, replaced by a calm serenity. Vikram stood in the now empty chamber, the shards of the mirror scattered at his feet. He felt a deep sadness but also a sense of closure. Chitra had found redemption, and the curse that had plagued the kingdom for a century was gone. As he walked out of the palace and into the morning sun, Vikram vowed to honor Chitra's sacrifice. He would tell her story, not as a tale of vanity and darkness, but as one of redemption, courage, and love. The once feared palace became a symbol of hope, its legend serving as a reminder that even the darkest of curses can be broken by the light of selflessness.